The atmosphere on set turned tense in an instant when whispers began circulating that two major love and hip-hop stars, Bambi and Kirk Frost, had been involved in a moment no fan could have ever imagined. Word is, a heated argument between the two escalated beyond just words, crossing a line that left cast, crew, and viewers stunned. Those who were there claim the scene felt less like reality TV and more like a high-voltage movie moment. With emotions running dangerously high, crew members were caught off guard. Some co-stars stood frozen in shock, and a few even reached for their phones trying to capture what was happening in front of them. Almost immediately, the buzz spread like wildfire across social media. Gossip, blogs and fan pages flooded their feeds with clips and cryptic captions, all circling back to the same question. Was this real, or just another carefully staged stunt for the cameras? And if it was real, what could have pushed things to this breaking point? Many fans believe long-standing tensions between Bambi and Kirk finally boiled over. But the full truth behind this explosive moment is something everyone is now desperate to uncover. It began like any other shooting day for the cast, the kind where the crew moved with a practiced rhythm, cameras being adjusted, lights casting a warm glow over the set, and makeup artists making last-minute touch-ups. But if you paid close enough attention, you could sense something was already off the moment Bambi stepped onto the floor. Her walk had a certain deliberate pace, her eyes sharp and scanning, almost as if she was preparing herself for a battle she knew was about to happen. The chatter in the room dipped just slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough for anyone tuned into the energy to know that the air was heavier than usual. Across the set, Kirk Frost was mid-conversation with one of the producers, speaking with his usual calm confidence. His tone was steady, but the moment his gaze met Bambi's from across the room, that steadiness seemed to waver. It wasn't much, just a flicker in his eyes, but it was enough to tell that he knew something was coming. They held each other's stare for just a beat too long, and in that brief moment, everyone nearby could feel the invisible current of tension spark between them. At first, what passed between them was quiet enough to almost be missed. Bambi approached with a controlled stride, her face unreadable, and Kirk turned to face her, still holding on to that faint smile he often used in tense situations. She opened with something that, on paper, might have sounded casual, a comment about something Kirk had said earlier that week, but her tone had an edge, like a blade wrapped in silk. Kirk replied evenly, brushing it off as a misunderstanding. But Bambi wasn't buying it. The first few exchanges were like chess moves, calculated and measured, each side feeling the other out. But the restraint didn't last long. Within minutes, Bambi's voice rose, her words sharper, her gestures broader. She started bringing up incidents from the past, moments she claimed Kirk had undermined her or disrespected her in subtle but deliberate ways. She spoke about private conversations that had made their way back to her, things she said Kirk had told other cast members that painted her in a negative light. Kirk, for his part, stood his ground. He denied the more serious accusations outright, and for others, he gave his version of events, insisting Bambi was twisting things. He said she was blowing small issues out of proportion, making drama out of nothing. But if his goal was to calm the storm, it wasn't working. Each denial seemed to make Bambi even more determined to push back. The scene didn't go unnoticed. Cast members who had been in other parts of the set drifted closer, pretending to check their phones or fix their outfits, but their eyes stayed locked on the unfolding drama. Scrappy, who had history with both, stood a few feet away with his arms crossed, watching closely, ready to step in if things crossed the line. The producers had their own quiet debate in the corner. Should they intervene to keep the peace, or let the cameras roll to capture what was quickly becoming the kind of reality TV gold you couldn't script? Bambi's voice took on a tone that mixed anger with something raw hurt. She accused Kirk of intentionally stirring up trouble, of planting seeds of doubt about her in other people's minds. She said he'd been smiling to her face while undermining her behind her back. Kirk's face stayed composed, but there was a tightness around his jaw that betrayed his frustration. When Kirk finally spoke again, his tone was cooler, more clipped. He told Bambi that she was embarrassing herself, making a scene that would only make her look bad when the episode aired. That line hit her like a match to dry wood. She stepped forward, closing the gap between them, her voice rising again. This time loud enough for every person on set to hear without straining. She said she wasn't afraid of how she looked on camera, because at least she was telling the truth. The crew shifted uncomfortably. A boom mic operator adjusted his position, not wanting to miss a word. A stylist in the corner stopped mid-fold with a pile of clothes in her arms. You could feel that collective tightening in the room, the way people lean in when they know something big is about to happen. Kirk lifted his hand slightly, palms out as if to signal he didn't want things to go further. But the look in his eyes told another story. This wasn't surrender. This was calculation. He muttered something under his breath, low enough that most couldn't make it out. But Bambi's reaction said it all. Her eyes widened for a split second, then narrowed into a glare that could have cut glass dot in a single motion. She took another step forward, so close now that the space between them felt electric. Her voice dropped, but the intensity didn't. She told him she'd been warned about him for months. Warned that he couldn't be trusted, that he was playing both sides in every conflict. She admitted she had chosen to ignore it out of respect for the people they both knew and the history they shared. But now she felt like a fool for giving him that benefit of the doubt. Kirk's response was a slow shake of the head, followed by a comment about how people love to twist the narrative to make themselves look like the victim. The words barely left his mouth before Bambi fired back, her tone almost trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of everything she'd been holding in. She brought up a recent situation involving another cast member, hinting at shady dealings that she believed Kirk had a hand in. This was the moment that shifted the energy from verbal sparring to something far more dangerous. A crew member instinctively moved a chair out of the way, just in case. One of the producers took a half step forward, eyes darting between the two of them, as if mentally preparing for the possibility of having to physically separate them. The air was thick now, every movement slow, deliberate. As though the room itself was holding its breath, Bambi pointed directly at Kirk, her arm unwavering, and said she was done. Done with the games, done with the fake smiles, done with pretending. Everything was fine. Her voice carried a finality to it, the kind that made even those who didn't know the full backstory feel the weight of her words. Kirk's expression didn't falter, but his silence in that moment spoke louder than anything he could have said. The tension was a living thing now, pulsing between them, and everyone present knew that whatever happened next could take this from a heated argument into something that would be talked about for seasons to come. The silence between them was stretched so thin, it felt like it could snap at any second. Every pair of eyes in the room was locked on the standoff. A few whispered exchanges rippled through the background cast members, trying to make sense of what they were witnessing without drawing attention to themselves. The camera operators were frozen in place, lenses trained tightly on their faces. Knowing this was the kind of footage producers fought over, Bambi's breathing was sharper now, her shoulders rising and falling with each inhale. She looked at Kirk like she was searching for any sign of remorse, any hint that he might step back from the edge. But Kirk didn't flinch. If anything, his stillness felt like a provocation, as though he was daring her to make the next move. Then, in a voice that carried just enough volume to be heard clearly, but not enough to be mistaken for shouting, Kirk said something that made the temperature in the room plummet. He told her she wasn't as important to the show or to the people around them as she liked to believe. It wasn't a loud insult, but it cut deep in a way that only a calculated jab could. A collective gasp went through the bystanders. One of the stylists quietly muttered, "Oh no," under her breath. Bambi's face went still, but the tension in her jaw and the way her hands flexed at her sides told everyone she'd just reached a breaking point. She stepped closer again, closing the last inches of space between them. Her voice came out low, but laced with fury. She reminded Kirk of the times she had defended him when others had called his loyalty into question. She spoke about the nights she had stood up for him when gossip and rumors threatened to drag his name through the mud. And now, she said, this was how he repaid her by diminishing her worth in front of the entire crew. Kirk shifted his weight, its expression tightening. He didn't back away, but his eyes flicked briefly toward the cameras, as if acknowledging that every word and gesture was being documented. He told her she was overreacting, that she was letting her emotions cloud the bigger picture. But before he could finish, Bambi cut him off, her voice rising to a pitch that bounced off the studio walls. She accused him of hiding behind carefully chosen words, of always twisting the narrative so he came out looking like the reasonable one, while everyone else looked unstable. Scrappy, who had been quietly watching from a few feet away, finally took a step toward them. His tone was calm, almost casual, but there was a warning underneath. He told them both to cool it before things crossed a line they couldn't walk back from. But Bambi barely glanced in his direction, her eyes still, locked on Kirk. The room was holding its collective breath again. Kirk took a slow step back, but it wasn't a retreat. It was more like repositioning in a fight. He said he'd had enough of the accusations, enough of the dramatics. If she wanted to believe the worst about him, then nothing he said would change her mind. That's when Bambi's voice cracked, not from sadness, from the sheer force of everything she'd been bottling up. She brought up a recent off-camera incident that most of the crew hadn't even known about, one that involved a private conversation Kirk had with someone close to her. The revelation sent a ripple through the crowd. People exchanged glances, some shaking their heads, others clearly trying to remember if they'd overheard anything that matched what she was saying. Kirk's response was immediate. He denied it outright, but his denial was so quick it almost sounded defensive. The speed of it didn't help his case. Bambi leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing, her voice dropping to a level where the intensity forced everyone to listen harder. She told him she had proof messages, witnesses, and details that she claimed would leave no doubt about what he'd done. The moment those words left her mouth, the atmosphere shifted. The crew knew that in reality TV, proof was the kind of word that could change an entire season's storyline. One of the producers subtly gestured for a camera to move in closer. Sensing that they were on the brink of something explosive, Kirk's jaw clenched. He asked her why. If she really had proof, she hadn't brought it to him privately instead of ambushing him in front of everyone. Bambi laughed, but it wasn't out of humor. It was sharp and cold. She told him she'd tried to handle things privately before, but every time she did, he found a way to turn it back on her. This time, she said she wanted the truth to be out in the open where everyone could see it. The crowd was hanging on every word now. Even people who weren't directly involved in the show but happened to be on set for other reasons had found themselves inching closer, drawn in like moths to a flame. A makeup artist who had been quietly packing up her kit stopped mid-motion, her brush still in her hand, eyes locked on the scene unfolding just feet away. Kirk took a slow breath, his expression shifting from irritation to something colder. He told her she was making a huge mistake, that public confrontations like this never ended well for anyone. But before he could say more, Bambi stepped forward and did something no one expected. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, holding it up as though ready to scroll through and show everyone what she'd been talking about. The energy in the room went from tense to electric in an instant. Every single person froze, eyes flicking between Bambi's face and the phone in her hand. Kirk's expression darkened. He told her she didn't know what she was playing with, that she was about to open a door she couldn't close. For a moment, It seemed like she might actually go through with it. Pull up the messages. Turn the screen toward the cameras and let the whole world see. Her thumb hovered just above the screen, the air so thick with anticipation you could almost feel it pressing against your skin. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the look in Kirk's eyes. Maybe it was the sudden awareness that this moment would follow her forever once it aired. But Bambi hesitated. The pause was brief, but it was enough for Kirk to take a small step forward, his voice dropping to a warning tone as he told her to think very carefully about what she was doing. The hesitation didn't erase the tension, it only made it sharper. The crew could sense that whatever happened next, this wasn't over. Not even close. Bambi's thumb still hovered over the phone screen, her breathing slow but heavy. The room seemed suspended in time. Every sound amplified, the faint hum of the overhead lights, the muffled cough of someone in the back, even the soft whir of a camera lens adjusting focus. Kirk's eyes were locked on hers, steady but tense, his jaw muscles twitching ever so slightly in that frozen moment. One of the producers tried to step in, moving cautiously between them. He held his hands out, palms forward, speaking in a calm, measured tone about keeping things professional and remembering that this was still a set. But his voice barely registered. Bambi didn't look at him. Kirk didn't either. The only conversation happening was silent. An unspoken battle of will between two people who had both decided they weren't going to be the one to blink first. Then, breaking the tension like a crack of thunder, Bambi said something so direct. It made a few people physically flinch. She told Kirk that if he thought she wouldn't blow up everything they had for the sake of truth, then he didn't know her as well as he claimed. The words were sharp, each one a deliberate strike. Kirk took a step closer, closing the gap between them. His voice dropped to a low rumble, barely above a whisper, but somehow it carried across the entire room. He told her she wasn't just risking their relationship or their reputations. She was playing with fire that could burn people she didn't even realize were in the line of it. Bambi's eyes narrowed. She accused him of trying to intimidate her, of hiding behind vague warnings instead of simply telling the truth. Kirk's gaze didn't waver, but something about the tightness in his expression suggested her words had landed. From the sidelines, Scrappy shifted uncomfortably. He looked from Bambi to Kirk, clearly debating whether to jump in again. He had seen enough reality TV blow-ups to know when things were about to cross from entertainment into something raw and dangerous. But before he could move, Bambi, finally, unlocked her phone and started scrolling. The sound of her finger flicking across the glass was loud in the silence. Everyone was leaning in now, eyes darting between her face and Kirk's, waiting for the moment the screen would be turned outward. But before she could show anything, Kirk's hand shot out, not to grab her phone, but to gently push it back toward her. His touch wasn't rough, but it was firm enough to send a message. He told her quietly but intensely that if she showed anything without knowing the full story, she would regret it. Not because he'd make her regret it, but because the truth was more complicated than she realized. This gave her pause. It wasn't what she expected him to say. The room seemed to shift again, the aggression giving way to a strange, uneasy curiosity. Bambi tilted her head, studying him. She asked him flat out what he meant. Kirk glanced toward the cameras, then back at her. He said there were things happening behind the scenes that she didn't know about. Alliances, deals, conversations that had nothing to do with loyalty or betrayal in the way she thought. He claimed that if he explained, it would pull other people into the mess who had nothing to do with their personal issues. Bambi laughed, a short, sharp laugh that didn't hide her disbelief. She told him he'd said the same kind of thing before, always just vague enough to make her doubt herself, but never concrete enough to change her mind. She said she wasn't falling for it this time. The tension started building again. Kirk's face hardened, and he told her that once she crossed a certain line, there would be no going back, and that wasn't a threat. It was just reality. He said she should be careful about what bridges she was willing to burn. Bambi's breathing picked up again. her chest rising and falling as the emotions swirled. She said maybe some bridges needed to burn. Maybe the whole set needed to see the kind of man he really was when the cameras weren't around. At that, Kirk's composure. Scrappy finally stepped in, planting himself between them. His voice was low but firm, telling them both to stop before the situation turned into something they couldn't walk away from. He reminded them that cameras were rolling, that fans would eat this up and twist it into something bigger than either of them intended. But instead of cooling off, Bambi seemed even more determined. She told Scrappy she wasn't afraid of the cameras. She was afraid of letting lies go unchecked. Kirk shook his head, muttering something under his breath that no one caught. But the tone was enough to make Bambi stiffen. One of the crew members whispered to another that this was going to be the episode everyone talked about. That it might even overshadow the rest of the season. The idea of that seemed to hang in the air. That they were in the middle of a scene that would live on in endless reruns and social media clips. Bambi looked at Kirk one more time. Her voice quieter now, but no less intense. She said she was done protecting him. Whatever happened next, it would happen in front of everyone. Kirk's expression froze into something unreadable. Then, in a move that caught everyone off guard, Bambi turned toward the nearest camera, her phone still in her hand. She didn't raise it to show the screen, not yet, but the intent was clear. She told the camera operator that maybe it was time the audience saw what she'd been holding back. The energy in the room shifted again. It's time from tense to volatile. People leaned in unconsciously. We want to hear what you think. Do you believe the rumors about Bambi and Kirk's heated argument? Or is this just another layer of reality TV chaos designed to keep viewers talking? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every opinion matters, and the conversation is only getting started. Make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed this update. And don't forget to subscribe for the latest news, gossip, and exclusive updates on your favorite reality TV stars. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the drama as it unfolds. Trust us, the next episode could change everything. And you'll want to be the first to know. Stay tuned, stay engaged, and keep watching. The world of love and hip-hop never stays quiet for long, and the next twist might be just around the corner. Your voice counts, your reactions matter, and the drama continues.